So welcome to day 3 of Social Media Week. Just so that you remember, we have one more session this afternoon with Ad Club. It is called Revolution and Evolution of Marketing. So be sure that you come out. It's from 5:30 until 7. If you want to come, no, come early because we have a Brad Paisley concert going on. So right now we have 3 wonderful speakers for the social media sports panel. So we have Victoria Klein, who's the Senior Coordinator and Digital Marketing Manager for the Atlanta Braves. We have Yoav Dubinsky, who's here and is a doctoral student with sports management here at UT. And then we have Ashley Kearns, who is with Team Sports for Lagadier, and she's also owner of Ashley Kearns Marketing and Management. So please welcome them.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. Hey guys, like she said, Victoria Klein. I'm with the Atlanta Braves. I graduated from the College of Communications in 2010. I'm an obnoxious UT alum. Everybody at work knows where I went to school. There's a lot of orange. Very, very proud to have come to this university. The best way to describe what I do for the Braves is any way that fans are interacting with the Braves online, your cell phone, a tablet, your computer. It's coming through my team at some point. That, for this purpose, is social media. That's my main focus, is our strategy in social media. When I graduated from UT, I knew I wanted to be in sports, but I wasn't quite sure what direction I wanted to go. I started in the football recruiting office here, eventually jumped to the media relations office for women's basketball. I got to be here when Pat Summitt was here, which was a career highlight for me. Spent some time in the NFL and eventually landed with the Atlanta Braves as an intern. And when I was an intern 6 or 7 years ago now, I was the first digital marketing intern. We didn't have this when I was in college. It was still evolving. What it's come in that time span is almost undescribable. So there was 2 of us then. I now have a staff of 6 to run our social media for the Braves, so you can see it's grown exponentially. I think how we view social for the Braves really kind of falls into 2 main buckets with one side bucket. The first thing that we always try to do on social media with the Braves is engage with the fans. That's why I'm here. I just came from spring training yesterday. I meet with the entire team in the spring, and I always look at them and I say, I'm the bridge between you and our fans. I have the access, I have the up-close relationships. I'm the one that can give the behind-the-scenes look, so that's my job. I think we like to describe it in our marketing department as storytelling. It sounds a little bit cliche, a little cheesy, but really that's what social media and sports is from the team side, telling you the story about our players as individuals, about our team, what we're doing. The Atlanta Braves just built a new ballpark that opened last year. Not sure if any of you got down. You should come. It's a lot of fun. But we also built our own mixed-use development as well. So I was also in charge of the social media for our mixed-use development, which is retail, restaurants, shopping, that sort of thing. So, you know, being in sports, started as sports, and now I have a little bit of experience on the retail side as well. Another bucket that we're looking to hit through social is revenue, obviously. Trying to put butts in seats, we're trying to sell tickets, and I think the most constant battle in social media is people saying, oh, tweet this out with a link to buy tickets. Like, surely they'll come, right? That's just not how it works. Like, you guys are on social, you're consumers, you don't just see that. But maybe if I make a really cool Star Wars hype video and I have our first baseman dressed up as Chewbacca, like, you're more likely to interact with something like that than you would be just a straight, like, here's Star Wars night, buy a ticket. So we are focused on, revenue and selling tickets, but we have to be smart about it, and we have to go back to that engagement piece. And then more recently, we've gone to the customer service side. You know, when you're on social, that's how people are looking to get a response when they're having a problem. And so we've actually hired someone full-time that customer service on social media is just their job. When you used to come to a Braves game, if you had an issue, you would write a letter. That evolved into a phone call, into an email. It's now our goal, if you come into the ballpark and have any sort of issue, we can remedy that and have you leaving happy. You have a much better chance of returning and coming back if you had a good experience with us the first time. That also kind of goes to the positive side. So we're using social monitoring through every game. Even if you don't think we're listening, we almost always are. So if you say, I'm here celebrating my birthday, or it's my parents' anniversary, they're here, you know, we will send somebody with a gift bag and some swag, some shirts, whatnot, and we'll stop by and try to enhance that experience. So social media is touching all of these different, buckets for us. And then there's obviously the player side, and Ashley can speak really closely to that. But I work really closely with our players marketing agencies like Ashley, and their agents on their marketing. They are a personal brand all of themselves. So it's important that as we're telling the team story, we're also telling the player story and kind of introducing them to you, who they are as players, who they are as people. And it's interesting. I talk to agents all the time that are trying to talk their clients into having social media because they get much better sponsorship deals. They can make more money. Basically, athletes have to be on social now to kind of make money. So there's a lot of different things that we're doing on social. Like I said, I was at spring training all week, so we were creating a bunch of different hype videos. We're sharing different articles, photos, videos. It's always a test and learn. I can take everything that I did at spring training last year, look at the analytics. Was it successful? Were we connecting with fans? Were we telling the story we wanted to tell? And that will help guide us for this year. But social between last year and this year has already changed so much that it's completely different. Now you've got Instagram story. People are currently mad at Snapchat. There's this whole, where are people consuming and how are they consuming? And the last thing I'll touch on too is how important analytics are for us. Not only are we seeing what fans like, what are you responding to, what do you enjoy that we are sharing about the team, but also, technology has come such a long way that we're able to kind of use how fans are engaging with us on social and kind of profile you from there. So if we put something out there that says, our center fielder, Ender Inciarte, just won his second Gold Glove. Here's a really cool hype video about him winning it. If you engage with it, we have the technology now to kind of mark you. Okay, we've earmarked you. Chris likes Ender Inciarte. So when Ender Inciarte bobblehead night comes out, I can retarget you with an ad months later telling you about this bobblehead night because you've already engaged with something about Ender. So social is teaching us a lot about our fans and what they like. It's helping us make major business decisions on the marketing side. We've gone from newspaper ads to billboards, and now a lot of our funds being shifted straight into digital and social because you can see so many incredible analytics and what fans like to see. So it's kind of my spiel.
Good job. Yeah. You gonna go for it?
I'm Yoav Dubinsky. I'm a third-year PhD student. This is my last semester here at UT, born and raised in Tel Aviv, Israel. I'll try to give a journalist perspective and an academic perspective to social media. Last year, thank you very much for having me here. That's a pleasure and an honor. Last year, I took my class to this panel, so it's great to be here as a panelist in my last semester here at UT. It's been a great ride. I have over a decade and a half of experience as a sport journalist in Israel, covering hundreds of sports events, including 3 Olympic Games. The games from Beijing, from London, and from Rio, which I also did research for as part of my PhD. I'm doing my PhD at the Department of Kinesiology, Education and Sports Studies, concentration in sports management. And social media is changing the game. Whenever new technology is introduced, it changes the game of the old technology, and in terms of sports, the game of sports as well. Radio brought in the live component, television brought in TV rights, revenues, made the whole Olympic movement professional rather than amateurish because of the live exposure, the sponsorships. Different pressure groups started to take advantage of that to send their messages. The internet brought the accessibility of knowledge, that everything is available here and now. When I was, I don't know if you grew up in the age of pre-internet. I grew up I was a Phoenix Suns fan. Charles Barkley was my favorite athlete growing up. But whenever there was a game on Thursday night in the US, in Israel, Thursday night in the US means in Israel it's 6 a.m. So the newspapers on a Friday morning did not show the games, of course, that ended at 11 p.m. Eastern time or 6 a.m. Israeli time. So for me, as growing up in Israel, I need to wait until Sunday morning paper to know what Phoenix did on a Thursday night game. Internet changed that, made everything accessible here and now, and social media brought in a new component of taking away the mediator. Athletes, organizations don't need me as a journalist or my editors to send their messages. They don't depend on us journalists to have their messages out there, and that reflects in various implications. One of them is that they control at least how the message comes out. Of course, there are the limitations of whether it's 140 or 170 or 270 characters on Twitter or a photo on Instagram or whatnot, but they don't depend on gatekeepers to edit their message. This means that they can show their brands, brand themselves, talk directly to their audiences, but also raise different issues. Harry Edwards, one of the key sports sociologists from San Jose State, reflects on this era as the fourth wave of Black athletes activism, and part of it is because of social media, of athletes using social media as a way to talk directly to their audience. If in the first wave, Dr. Edwards discussed athletes suffering from racial discrimination in the US but getting recognition abroad, such as Jesse Owens. Second wave, more of breaking segregation, such as Jackie Robinson. Third wave, more in the 60s and 70s, of athletes being associated with social movements and being conscious, being socially aware, but also suffering from consequences from speaking out. Muhammad Ali, Tommy Smith, John Carlos, for example. In this wave, in the fourth wave, athletes have the power. They control the message. They talk directly to their audience. They don't need the traditional media to manipulate what they say. The key example is LeBron James from the days in Miami Heat and the hoodies protest, and he's one of the most vocal athletes on social issues, including this weekend of "We Will Not Shut Up and Dribble." Of course, Colin Kaepernick, the Missouri football team, and countless of examples. But it's not only on race. Sectors of society that were ignored or were underrepresented in social media are using social media to get their messages across. The U.S. women's soccer team, the U.S. women's national team in soccer, is one of the most vocal group of athletes that use social media to raise gender issues, whether it was playing on turf instead of playing on grass. They announced canceling a game in Hawaii because of the turf conditions through social media, through the Players Tribune, which is a website that gives athletes a voice, and Hope Solo posted a photo on social media. Page gaps, and we see that whenever they speak up on page gaps, other teams and athletes speak up as well. We saw last night some of the implications of investing in women's sports, with the U.S. hockey team winning a gold medal after 4 straight Olympics that Canada won, and they were also very vocal about gender equality and pay gap inequality. And in traditional media, women are underrepresented, and social media gives that platform. More than that, we can see in the Me Too campaign that this was extremely influential, that the Me Too campaign, the Women's March, female athletes were very influential on that, whether it was Hope Solo, or Alex Morgan, or Billie Jean King in the Women's March. Michaela Maroney, when she posts about the abuse by Larry Nassar, she's a household name. It's not club level athletes, it's not athletes from a decade ago or so. it's someone who actually became famous through social media. Well, she became famous because she's a great athlete and she won a gold medal and a silver medal in the London Olympics. But she became also a social media meme while she did her unimpressed look while receiving a silver medal in London. So she's a household name, and when she speaks out, people know her, young people know her, and after she spoke out, other top athletes spoke out. Ali Reisman, who went on all media platforms, she wrote part of her book, and then 60 Minutes, and every morning show, and on a daily basis on social media to talk about what happened and how USA Gymnastics and Michigan State and the USOC should have differently. The trial itself, gymnasts were watching were getting the news about the trial of Larry Nassar on social media. They were watching on YouTube some of the testimonies and realized, well, that happened to me as well. And originally there was supposed to be something like 80 gymnasts who should have testified, and it came to 150, something like that. And that's part of the power of social media. With that said, there are risks as well. Whatever you post on social media is there. There are risks of being hacked. A few years ago on draft night, an athlete's account was hacked, and a video of him smoking a bong through a gas mask was uploaded, and that caused him to be drafted much lower, and that cost his revenues later on. So whenever you do something, there could be implications, and whenever you post something that's online, and even though you tweet it, you never know who does a print screen, and then it's there forever. As journalists, there are good and bad implications. Obviously, the fact that everyone's a journalist, that everyone could post a story, reduces the dependency on professional journalists, but also reduces the reliability of the news source. Where does the information come from? As well, journalists as well use social media. We see some positive impacts of that, of journalists bringing their own take, their own story through social media, of covering sports events that they cannot necessarily share that through their coverage. But also we see that some journalists suffer from consequences for voicing their opinions through social media, which kind of raises the question, should journalists shut up and as well. That's it for me. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Guess I'm last. So, so my name is Ashley Kearns. I graduated here in 2005, which is just really recently. But yeah, so 2005, I am from Knoxville. I went to Bearden High School, born and raised, and then I've been in Atlanta since I graduated. And just finish off the educational segment of this, I did get my MBA at Georgia Tech a little bit later, which I highly recommend education as far as you want to take it, because it certainly validates you to be sitting in positions like this. So that's the educational side. Professionally, when I was here at Tennessee, I was interning at the Sports Animal my last semester, still there, and I was covering UT football practice. And it was a year not unlike this past year in which we were supposed to be good, and it turned into the year that Philip Fulmer got fired. So an absolute just crap show, since there's cameras, of a year in media. And this is, again, pre-social, really. Like, it was just kind of coming out. Can you imagine? But yeah, we were dealing in a time where people were getting their information a lot more from blogs or from news articles or from radio, which is where I was working, so it was a lot more relevant even than it is now. So went from there to Atlanta, where I was an intern at Fox Sports, and we were covering most of the regional sports teams. So I was partners with the Braves, and so if Braves games on TV, Victoria's handling the team side of it, I was handling the TV side of it. where she's encouraging people to be at the stadium and consuming the event in person, I'm encouraging to watch on TV. And then after that, I came back to an agency here in Knoxville called A3 that did professional athlete representation. I was 25. I had a degree in English at the time. I'd been working at Fox Sports. Got there, we signed Eric Berry 3 months later, and I'm in charge of his entire marketing portfolio without a single clue what to do. God bless the man, because he put his trust in me and said, let's do this. And so that was a really, really fun 3 years. And like I said, I think being thrown in your career over your head is the greatest thing that can ever happen to you, because you find a way to figure it out. And then lastly, after that, I left, started my own company, did that for 6 years, and I still have it, and it's in form. I have some clients that I represented or that, but just about 4.5, 5 months ago, I joined a group called Lagardère Sports, and they're a $2 billion international company. Headquarters in New York, our U.S. headquarters are in New York, and I've joined them with the football division is also team sports, but relatively newly acquired to that, and so we have about 90 clients in the NFL and a couple of broadcast guys. So I work with a team of 4 agents and me and 90 NFL athletes, so you can count the number of women in that environment, which is just me. So that it was interesting for you to talk about the social issues, because as much as I would like to have a professional opinion on it, I'm completely in the male world, 100%. So, which creates very interesting challenges on social media, which is what we're here to talk about. So, my role in my current position is Director of Team Sports, but I'm focused mainly on marketing, revenue generating, really everything that comes to the player brand. And I was kind of just taking a look through the room. There's more people that I represent that I'm in charge of their brand and social media that are currently in this room. So if you can imagine trying to come up with a strategy that fits all of you guys, you know, but do you want the same person running all of your social media? Absolutely not. You know, like, we're going to lose a voice there. And so that is my biggest challenge. And so I sit up here really looking forward to hopefully working with some of you guys one day to try to figure this out, because it is the biggest challenge of what I do, is to try to figure out everybody's individual voice and not making it vanilla or saying don't shut up and dribble, you know, or you need to talk like this, or this is your verbiage. Authenticity, if you lose the authenticity, then you've lost it. And so that's my biggest challenge. So a little bit about, you know, the different elements, and if you guys have questions about this, I'm just gonna kind of hit on it and feel free to ask afterwards. But how we, obviously personal brand, who are you? And since I'm in football so much of that, there's a helmet involved, and so you don't really get to see the personality. And one of the things I'm probably most passionate about in my job is getting to tell people stories, because like, I think people will say, or you'll hear, oh, NFL players, they're kneeling, NFL players are this, or NFL players. The diversity is absolutely insane, as far as personality, of education, socioeconomics, race, like sexual orientation, you name it. All those things exist in this NFL player, you know, brand. And so getting to be able to figure out how to tell individual stories is really one of the most important thing, I think, that will be in the future of athlete representation. So for any of you guys that, I know most of you all will be in communications and that type of thing, you know, I think the agent business is gonna, you know, I think marketing is going to be there, but you've got players that can handle it, like a Russell Wilson, or, you know, somebody on that level. And then everybody else, how are you gonna, like, all of us, you know, that are in the communication world and understand social media, that's gonna be the next job. And so I think as you guys sit here, really think about that, is becoming someone's brand and voice on social media. I think that's where it's going. So there's that. Crisis management, like, you can imagine what people post on their social media, and as much as we'd like to keep the reins on it, things happen. And I think I see some familiar faces. Some of you were down in Atlanta, and I shared the story of a client posting a really, really catastrophic image, and I don't want to talk about it by name since there are cameras, because I don't want to call him out on it, but he posted an image and sent us into just a firestorm of crisis management. And it was up on social media for about 11 seconds when you go back and look at it. And it got screenshotted and goes. And so that part of it is so hard. And I don't think anybody will ever be able to completely control it, because you're dealing with individuals, mostly between, the ages of 20 and 30 that are making a good amount of money and living really fun lives. Like, stuff is going to get posted. Second to that, there's also all of us look at our phones right now and be like, whew, like the social environment. The social environment is so intense that I think we all have trouble holding back our opinions at times. There's certain things that you read that you're just like, oh, I cannot say something. And so I don't feel like it's my job to tell you not to voice an opinion on something. I mean, I may say, for instance, I was thinking about this earlier. I had a client that was sponsored by USAA, and I suggested to them that maybe it wasn't the best idea to kneel during the national anthem if you want to keep that sponsorship. Now, if you don't care, you do you, but that's the only opinion I'm going to have. Which leads me into the biggest part, which is endorsements. Like, brands are going to want to activate with guys that have a really strong social media presence. There's just not the money being spent on commercials or on print or on in-store displays. I mean, everything is digital. And so, like, I think a couple of my colleagues here hit on is that unless you have a social media presence, you're not going to be a very endorsable athlete down the road. And it's changed. I mean, Peyton Manning did nothing on social media. Like, it's kind of crazy to think about. Didn't have Instagram, didn't have Twitter, wasn't posting, and managed to build that. That's going to be, I think that's extinct. I think that he was probably the last big endorser that could handle that, at least in NFL. So that's the biggest, challenge. And it actually hit me. I'll tell one quick story, and then we'll talk more. We get actually what you guys want to hear about versus what we're just up here talking about. But I was just at Super Bowl in Minneapolis. Yes, it was as cold as it looked. It was absolutely brutal. And I was fully responsible for Randy Moss that week. I don't know if you guys are a little bit young, but if anybody knows Randy Moss, he's a absolute freaking character and is as wonderful as I would have ever hoped him to be. But we were at an event with Call of Duty, and it was a live stream, and it was a really pretty small environment, a room no bigger than this, and he was playing Juju Smith-Schuster. So it was Juju and Randy Moss. Randy Moss is about 40. Juju is the youngest player in the NFL. I think he's barely 20. And so I noticed, I was just sitting back and watching y'all, because Randy comes in, he has been running around, he's wearing like an old Vikings hoodie and like a beanie hat and some jeans that I think were like from 1997, and rolls up in there and he's like, hey y'all, what's going on? But he engaged every person that was there. He was telling stories, he was, on his phone interviews, he was just really reminiscing, and I was watching him being like, man, he won the room. Well, then Juju comes walking in, and he's like, the phone is already out. He's just like, hey, I'm coming in live feed, Call of Duty, we got Randy Moss. He doesn't talk to anyone in the room, but he's talking to everyone here. Then he sits down, and there's a girl in a Juju Smith-Schuster jersey, I kid you not, with him at all times with two phones in her hand. One's doing Instagram, one's doing Snapchat. They're propping it up, they're doing live, and I was just sitting there just like, this is the future. This is what kids these days. But they didn't talk. They really didn't engage well in the room. After that stopped, then that exchange happened. But the generational factor that hit me, and you guys will agree, of this guy that has, was going into the NFL Hall of Fame. He still had his phone out. I mean, he still did images, but his engagement in the environment was so present. And then what do you lose when you are constantly streaming to the world? Now, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. There's a price to pay when you don't engage. But at the same time, I was just absolutely in awe of the social media machine that was the most, and not one of my clients, but one of Juju's, the most followed NFL rookie on social media. I did see that, which I thought was interesting. So that I saw in that moment how strategic it was. It wasn't, he just was like literally a human being walking around him with 2 phones all the time capturing stuff. And I think that that's the only way to successfully be at that level is to have someone that attentive to it. Is that fair?
Yeah,
So
totally.
I'm rambling. So if there's anything else more specific that you guys want to hear about, that I think I would love, I guess if I was going to summarize that, I mean, that's my story. It's been crazy and it's been like this, and in some parts of it look glamorous, other parts of it have been absolute catastrophic. But I think what you guys sitting here now should know is I think people kind of looked at communications when I was in school like, oh, well, what are you going to do with that? To me, communications is now one of the most important parts of marketing and brand, and what you guys are building is going to have a real big place in industry, whether it's sports or other things. You guys agree with me on that? Like it's a little bit different. Like when I was doing PR, I was sending press releases and fielding phone calls and looking at TV ratings, and now I think the job would be totally different. So if you guys take anything away from that, I would love to leave you with that. And yeah. That's it, right?
So I do have one question for you guys before we get to the students' questions, but what advice do you have for students to get from where they're sitting now to where you're sitting now?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I knew I wanted to be in sports. I was always passionate about sports. I just didn't know what realm I wanted to go in. And it certainly wasn't as specific as where we are in this room right now. But I sat down in Hess Hall freshman year and took the book of majors at UT and just started flipping through it, which sounds archaic. So I guess it is. I'm old. Here we are. And I saw sports journalism, and that's what my degree is in. And I said, okay, I'm going to be Erin Andrews. Like, that's it. I'm going to go on the sidelines. I'm going to talk about sports. That is my path. And so I took an internship at WATE Channel 6 in the sports department here in Knoxville. And my very first night on the job, Tennessee was playing Kentucky in basketball. And this was in the Bruce Pearl era. We were really good. And I get in the news van and I go down there. I'm front row on press row, and I'm like, this is it. Like I've nailed it. I'm 5 minutes in, and I'm sure this is my career path. And Jody Meeks of Kentucky put up 54 points that night by himself. It like set the record in Thompson Bowling Arena. Tennessee got embarrassed on national TV, and I had to write the 11 o'clock news story about how bad we were and how far back that was going to put us in the SEC, and was Bruce Pearl going to still be here? Like just like that, all of a sudden we were here and we were here, and I had to write how bad we were. And so I realized very quickly, I can't be objective about Tennessee. I'm always going to find the spin. I'm always going to say, well, Butch tried, or, you know, whatever the case is. So I said, okay, I got to go to the team side. And that's how I ended up in media relations and working on the Lady Vols side over there. So I'm on the team side, because then you can always find the positive side. And so from there, like I said, I went to the NFL for a year. I tried the community relations department. I needed a little bit more creative outlet. So for me, ending up where I was about finding out where I didn't want to be, but I found my strengths and weaknesses along the way. So if you have an interest in sports or almost anything, just try it. Intern, meet people, network, just get your feet wet, get your hands dirty, try it. Like I said, for me, it was about realizing what wasn't working to get to where I was working. And here I am.
I'm realizing now that it's funny, when I was working on like football player camps and community relations, pretty sure I emailed with you while you were an intern at the NFL, because your name has always been familiar to me.
There you go.
So you never know when you're going to cross back paths with
The
people.
sports world is incredibly
Right?
small. It is incredibly small.
I mean, I can give you advice about how to be a journalist in Israel, but I'm not sure that this is what you're aiming for. But I will say this: the path has a lot of ups and downs, a lot of mountains and valleys, and you need to hang in there. I would say that in journalism, there's a reason why I decided to go through academia, to focus on academia rather than develop a journalism career, because to a certain extent, I think there's less stability there, and especially growing up In my 20s, it was nice, it was exciting. Covering the Beijing Olympics was a childhood dream of mine. But after that, there's also a void coming into that as well. And at a certain point, I decided to focus more on academia. A practical advice, regardless of academia or journalism, is try to bribe yourself and to think when you think you have, what do you want people to think of? If it's in journalism, what do you want to focus on? What do you want to be associated with? When I'm at UT, when I came to our department at the sports management department, the first semester was more about looking what's going on, who can I be, what can I emphasize. Because I'm probably one of the best Hebrew speakers in the history of our department, but that gives me absolutely no equity. What does give me equity is my journalistic experience and my international experience. And I thought that I built on that to leverage some opportunities that I had, including teaching sports management, sports communication courses in the last 2 years, including doing some things that have to do with both journalism and research. So I think the more that you can really define who you want to be and in what way you can contribute to your organization, that could be benefit for all.
Cool. It's funny, like, it's always good to be asked that question when you're sitting here, because, the journey, like everybody says ups and downs, and I know that that's a cliche statement, but I think the thing about your 20s is you literally are hanging on by a very fine thread the entire time. You're one decision from having to change jobs or change careers or not feeling like, and like I said, I think it's longer in sports. I think that time frame is longer than just it is if you went to law school or you went to something else. But my advice would be find out what you're good at, what you're confident in, and then apply it to the industry. One of the biggest things that I always get turned off on when I'm interviewing someone is I want to work in sports or I love sports, and that is not a skill. That's just an interest. And so, why do you want to work in sports? Oh, well, I can write. I feel like I can write from the perspective of an athlete. That'll get you hired at the Players Tribune, right? The players don't write those. They talk to someone who's writing. Okay, if look at that, I'm cool under pressure. I feel like I can handle calming someone down after a big game. Okay, look at working in an athletic department or working in communications for a professional team on that side of things. So think about it that way. For me, that thing is I love telling people stories. I really like people that are different than me, and I feel like going into a situation, it's nice to find what you have in common, and that helps to build some trust. And so the athlete representation side really suited my personality, which I took some time to figure out. Like, I think we talked about that. Always seek a challenge. If you are not in over your head, then you're not doing it right. I'm 34 years old. I have gotten my dream job, frankly, and I constantly every day being like, oh my gosh, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm gonna mess this up, I've been working in this for 12 years, and so that's an okay feeling because it means you're gonna figure out the answer to it and you're gonna push yourself. So if you get comfortable, make a change. You're not in the right place. And then be good to people. I know that sounds so silly and simple, but be good to people, be kind to people, and especially when you're working in a really tough industry, oh my gosh, you want to be able to pick up the phone and ask for a favor, and keep that. You're not going to be best friends with everyone, but the network that you build is going to be based on being good to people, and I think that's one of the most important things is we're all everybody's is competitive if you're in this industry, and as I've gotten older, I've gotten a lot nicer. I was coming in blazing hot at 22, 23, trying to earn my place, and so it's nice to just be a little bit kind, but also be tough. So good.
Great. Yes. So, what questions do you guys have? Okay. I do have another one. So we have 2 advanced PR writing courses in here. So what ways do you guys use writing, even through social media, that you could talk to them about and tell them how important writing is?
I'll take that one,
Yes.
because I'm the English writing major.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't even think Tennessee still has this degree, but it was English writing and rhetoric. And writing is by far the most important thing that I think I do. I think in general, like sometimes you're writing publicly, sometimes you're writing just for your own use. But I think if you capturing a voice, and that's where, from my side, for social media, okay, how do you speak like this player, like I've got to talk like Khalil Mack 1 second, and then I've got to talk to like Christian McCaffrey, or I'm trying to think of any of it, like any one of our big fat offensive linemen who are into like Traeger grills and, you know, bass fishing, and then you just turn around and talk like Randy Moss, you know, like that seems so simple, but like for it to be authentic, you have to get voice. So as far as writing goes, learning that what voice you put your writing in and being able to be a little bit flexible in that would be, I think, the biggest asset from my perspective. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
And then being able to, on a more business perspective, being able to write out, answer someone's what they want before they know what that is. So, okay, I was talking to a group today that it's called Rally House. It's like a, you know, kind of like alumni hall or something like that. And it's, okay, they wanted to do an endorsement with one of our clients. Okay, just based on our phone conversation, what do I think that this guy is going to respond to in order to engage this client? And so taking it, not just sitting down and writing, getting that voice in your head, trying to understand characters and flow. And I think that's just part of reading, and, you know, as you develop that skill set. But I would say that's why being able to write has always been something I am incredibly thankful for. It's got me further than a lot of things.
Yeah, I can piggyback on that a little bit too. From the team side, you know, writing is extremely important for us. It used to be in sports, when news was confirmed, it was sent out via press release, and we are still sending press releases. But nowadays, the tweet is the one that's confirming, you know, the players being traded, roster moves, those sort of things. Those have to be worded exactly right. Everything that we put on social. So the Braves have, you know, 1.3 million followers on Twitter. We're over 2 million on Facebook. One wrong word is a screenshot away from a crisis, like Ashley said. So knowing what you're saying, understanding your voice, and your word choice is extremely important when you're speaking to such a mass audience.
I would say about writing that it's extremely important, and that by using different platforms, you acquire more skills. And I look at the 3 main platforms that I write, either as a journalist writing something pretty straightforward, not too colorful language, writing as in the academia, APA style references completely differently than writing a journalistic article. And then writing a blog, which is much more personal, much more casual language, perhaps can make more jokes and more casual, and actually at times answer talkbacks if I'm conducting a personal blog. I think all of that gives you different skills, different abilities to maneuver until you find the voice that you're more comfortable with, or just to shake things up, go between them. That's my perspective on that.
So you've all mentioned challenges and crises. So what's the best way that your organization goes about managing those crises and overcoming them?
Yeah, I can start. So, you know, from baseball, there's a lot of different things that can go, especially in building a ballpark. But, you know, we've had a lot of different situations with the Braves that would fall under crisis management, whether that be issues with the team. You know, we've had, in my time now, we've had 2 deaths in the ballpark, that sort of thing. I think the key to that is communication and a plan internally. We always have a plan for how we communicate, where we're communicating it, what we're saying, how we're saying it. The organization has to be on the same page about what that message is. And then we also have to be ready to adapt and change quickly because the plan will always change undoubtedly. So from the team's perspective, it's having a plan, but always being able to adapt that plan to change because it will undoubtedly change every single time.
I feel a bit uncomfortable talking about the organization just because I'm not affiliated with the athletic department, and Tennessee has been going through some things, so I feel a bit that I'm not knowledgeable or in a position to talk about how Tennessee has handled things. So I'll skip this one. But,
Soft pass, yeah. So I get, I guess, two things. So I've got my company, and then I've got the new group that I work for. In my group, if it's just me, then I ultimately, wait, my chin is like bleeding for some reason. So do you guys see this, or is it okay? I'm fine, okay. Like I'm so weird about it. So if it's one of my clients, it depends what it is. So rule number one, injuries, I don't say anything about. It's just kind of across the board, the agent or the team is the one to comment on an injury. And also, yeah, so if it's an injury, something like that happens, whether it's on the field or something else happens, like if it was a Jason Pierre-Paul situation where you losing it off with fireworks, it's not something that I would directly take front on, just because if anything that impacts their NFL contract, defer to team and agent, if that makes sense. If it's something that is a lot more like a social issue, or that social issue is something that I would take on more personally. But yeah, the difference has been recently is going back to having a boss again. And I hadn't had a boss for 6 years, and he is phenomenal, one of the most intelligent people I've ever known. He's also incredibly private. I've always called him the Wizard of Oz. Even when I worked in the business, it's like you never really saw this guy. So he's very private. Like I'm obviously not very private in how I just communicate and talk about things. And so I've got to balance the whole vibe of Lagardère in general is pretty less is more. There's an exclusiveness that they want to keep to how they handle things, and so I like that and I respect it. It was not something I could do when I was a small company. So how the organization handles it, it really depends on the situation. And then obviously right now I'm deferring up to a larger group. So that's a downside. There's great things about working for yourself because you get to call the shot. But there's also a lot of instability, and then you go back to a big company and it's great and it's stable, but the chain is a little bit longer to get to an answer. So that one.
We have a question over here.
So do you guys find it difficult sometimes to communicate the player's voice when it could possibly conflict with your organization's voice, like the MLB or the NFL?
Yeah, I mean it's a mess, y'all. Like it's really hard to balance that. And I think right now there's, even with the social environment and gun control and all the topics that are relevant in our country right now, I think young people have a really important voice in that. And when it comes to NFL stuff, I mean the biggest thing right now is obviously the anthem protests and things like that. It's one of those things where I elected to not get involved. I thought it was something that you do what you feel like you need to do, and you need to stand behind it. And if you want assistance in, how you communicate it, like I had a couple guys on both sides do things like the Players Tribune, where they explained in a little bit more detail why they were doing what they were doing, and it was on both sides. They had somebody do why I stand, and somebody said why I'm kneeling, and they wanted to just explain that a little bit further. So outside of that, I think it really is tough. I do not have the answer. So like I think I said before, is like if it's going to impact your money, then I'm going to tell you what the repercussions of said action or verb may be, and then you can make the call. But if it's a non-revenue situation, then you're a grown man. Like, just be warned. You know it's going to happen. And so that does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I would say baseball is definitely a little bit more of an old school sport. We were prepared for the kneeling situation. Like I said, we had a plan, like if it hit, what would we do? What would the players say? And that sort of thing, but it never really affected us in Atlanta with the Braves. You know, we tell our guys, it's very generational in baseball. Our veteran players, most of them are not on social. When they see me walking towards them with Snapchat spectacles, they think it's an episode of the Jetsons. Like, they have no idea, like, why would I watch a video that disappears? And I'm trying to explain that to them. But our younger guys, you know, they're on social, they're active, and they get it. And for us, you know, in baseball, it's in 106 game season, so we're playing a lot of games. So every night almost, there's an opportunity for a fan to tell you how bad you were or how good you were. But most of the time, you know, when people are using that outlet, it's in a negative form. So, you know, I constantly encourage them, don't fight back. Like, you're never going to beat the internet, so just, you know, let it go. Some guys are like, they will stay off social throughout the season while they're playing and let agents take over or let us take over. And then some guys will argue with every single internet troll that comes after them. So I just try to like take it player by player, know what they're comfortable with, what message they want to get across, what's important to them, and just understand that, you know, when you take a risk, there's always going to be some sort of consequence on the other end, whether that be good or bad. You know, we have to wait and see sometimes on that. But, you know, it's just understanding the player and making sure that, you know, I control the brand voice of the Atlanta Braves online. Like, that is coming through our team. I understand who we are as a brand, an organization. I can control that. What our players say and do, I can help to guide them. I can give them my advice, some insight, but at the end of the day, they're going to make the call on that. I just have to give them as much information to make the right decision.
One thing I forgot about this is there are rules about when you can tweet in and around a game. And so that's one thing about having the keys to a lot of different guys' stuff is like keeping track of time zones and where they're playing, because you can't tweet within a certain, I think it's 60 minutes before any game. And I've made that mistake one time and it did not go well, because it is a fine that you end up getting if you, and it was like an automated thing. It was like a branded plugged in, oh, we're gonna tweet this out. And so being aware like that stuff, if you get fined, then that's obviously not gonna go over very well if something goes on that. But just all the things you have to be aware of when you're dealing with the players' social.
I think that here in the academia, if I'm taking the academia side for a second, we're kind of in a mixed place, because we try to encourage people to be critical thinkers. We want to encourage people, students, to challenge norms, to think outside the box, to understand why things are happening, and to critically analyze that. And some of, over the 3 years of teaching here at Tennessee, some of the most critical students that I had were college athletes on various issues, whether it was race or gender, or should athletes get paid, or whatnot. And that's very welcomed in the classroom. With that said, it's very welcomed in the classroom. It's outside the classroom, it's there are different rules and regulations and different reactions and restrictions about voicing your opinion about certain issues, and then college student athletes acknowledge that, and this puts us as educators in a difficult position of, yes, encouraging critical thinking and freedom of speech and freedom of thought, but saying at the same time, well, within this classroom.
I'm just curious to know, I know it's a bland question of what's your day-to-day, but more so, I want to know, like, what is something you go in every single day and you know you have to get to? It's something you cannot put off, even if it's at the end of the day once you get home, but you know that it's something you have to keep up with every single day.
Yeah, well, you know, a common term that we use is social never sleeps, so neither do we. So, you know, from a team perspective, you know, always trying to be, I can't go a day without seeing what our fans are talking about. You know, people are so used to communicating on the internet and getting a response so quickly. So for me, it's just like staying in constant communication. And then 2, understanding our strategy. You know, things get so busy, you play so many games, there's so much going on in the day-to-day that our team, you know, going back to our strategy, what's important to us? Did we hit these 3 main bullet points today? holding yourself accountable to kind of what's important at the end of the day. But yeah, every day it's for us, it's communication with fans and making sure we're tuned into the conversation.
I must say that my day-to-day is about the dissertation. I eat frequently my PhD dissertation, especially in the last year. But I love the Olympics and every day, and so I try to get a glimpse about the Olympics. One thing that I should say about the way that social media changed sports as well is the way that how we consume sport. We consume sport with several platforms. I'm tweeting with my friends in Israel about the Super Bowl, about USA, Canada, whatever. So that's another aspect that social media brought to that. But yeah, my life is not too exciting. It's about the dissertation finishing, and Dr. Arden is on my committee, and he holds me accountable to that as well.
That sounds like stressful. Yeah. I don't have a normal day, but I will say just kind of glance, make sure nothing catastrophic has happened. As far as like, I actually got really surprised. I actually got surprised by something. I was in a. Did anybody watch the NFL talent show on CBS? Did anybody see it? I had a client do Irish dancing. Oh my gosh, like the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. He's like tatted up, long dreads, committed to a full Irish dance with backup dancer. So anyway, I was watching that, and one of our clients had gotten arrested for allegedly taking a phone charger from an Uber, and I saw that and I was like, what? Things like that. But like that's, I was like, you can get arrested for that? Like I was like, I think I did that on my way here. But yeah, there's just like a quick scan to make sure that your day's not going to be shifted in some way or the other. But my job is kind of weird because I've kind of been doing so many different things, most of it, I honestly lean a lot more towards marketing and endorsements than I do towards PR and social. But that would that's the one thing. Just make sure nothing crazy's happened. It's going to affect the rest of the day. I know it sounds silly, but yeah.
So I love your generational example earlier. It's very, very true. So we were on WNML Sports Animal yesterday.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So you said that. They were live here out of the conference room next door.
Oh, fun.
John and Jimmy.
Listen, John gave me, that was my first internship.
That's what I thought. Okay,
Sports
okay.
talk, yeah.
So they brought up the fact that the coaches, the weeklies for the Lady Vols softball team, now have a very strict rule in place that before any practice of any game, anything, you have to turn over your cell phone.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to promote team, community, and face-to-face interaction.
Yeah.
So that kind of struck me when you were talking about the generational difference. But could you all speak to that? And do you think that that's a strong approach for a coach to?
Yeah, I'm gonna finish that thought and then I'll pass that off. But we in a very separate situation, but at the Super Bowl there was a event on Thursday night. We'll say it was Justin Timberlake. I was abnormally excited about it. But there was it was probably 250 people, and it was the first, you had to check your phone, right? Imagine this week of all these people that work in sports going into an event with Justin freaking Timberlake and you can't bring your phone in. Like what? And so you pass that out. It was the coolest thing because I felt like I talked to people more than I had in so long and actually engaged and connected and had some of the best conversations I've had with people that I've known for years that I just don't stop and talk to. So that being said, I think there's something to it. I really do. And I know that I don't want to sound old, but like I think there's some, I think we notice now when people put their phone down and have dinner with you, or when you're sitting there and you really have a connection. And I was actually with a client in I was at the tight end for the Bengals, Tyler Eifert, phenomenal, so fun, at the Garth Brooks concert, right? And he said, Ashley, like, why don't we he's like, I'm gonna try not to bring my phone out. And I was like, I will support this. It was a weird time that we were traveling on a work trip, and it was just the two of us, when it would normally be like a group of people. And I'll tell you, like, I think that his response and why he wanted to do it, it was really inspiring to me. It's the first time I think someone had said to me, I found it ironic that it was a player, but yeah, I think it's huge, and for a sense of trust and, now if something happens, everybody feels like they're a part of it if they saw it on social, I think there's something to be said for a little bit of discretion and privacy, and it brings people closer together in a shared experience that's secret. So I think I'm into it. But yeah, what do you guys think?
From a professional standpoint, that gives me major anxiety. So when I was looking at the analytics at the end of, I think it was 2016, I'm like, what was our most liked photo on Instagram this year for the Atlanta Braves? It was last year. We had opened a new ballpark, right? We have this brand new facility. We had traded. We had major league debuts all the time. Like, we had a pretty exciting year. The most liked photo on the Atlanta Braves Instagram account was our first baseman, Freddie Freeman, and his wife and their new baby in matching Christmas pajamas. And it wasn't close. Like, there was not a close second. And so, that off the field experience that people get with athletes, that's what they crave. That's what they want. They want to see Freddie Freeman in his onesie on Christmas Eve. Like, that is powerful. And so, from my perspective, if our manager said, Victoria, I'm cutting them all off, I would politely look at him and respectfully, yes, sir, it's your clubhouse. You make the rules. They are here to do a job, and that's to play baseball. But it's also my job to market them, so please don't put your phones away, Snapchat everything, share your Christmas onesie photo. It makes me look good when you do that. So, yes, like from a personal standpoint, I would love to put my phone down. I mean, yesterday when I flew up from spring training, that's a 45-minute flight from Orlando to Knoxville, and I literally text my team, I'm off the grid for 45 minutes. Like, I have to let them know I'm unavailable. If anyone fires off a tweet mad about something in 45 minutes, I cannot handle that. 47 minutes I'm available, 45 I'm not. So, from a personal standpoint, I'd love to back off a little bit. It's just not the world I live in, and that's okay. Like, I've chosen this, I love it, I'm very passionate about what I do. From a team side, whatever our manager decides to do, that's what we do. It's their job to play baseball. It's my job to market them playing baseball, and my job is far easier when they want to market themselves and kind of share that stuff. So, but I'm also about the lady ball softball team winning, so if that's what helps, then go for it.
I would say from a journalist perspective, you cannot fall behind. You cannot just excuse yourself and say, I'm old, so I'm not using social media. If you're doing that, you're gonna be left behind. You will not survive. You have to adapt. From an educator perspective, my students make me feel younger, but to see them on their phones all the time, that's not. I'm not taking it personally, but me as well. We're all attached to it too much. To some extent.
Do we have any other questions?
I think I just have one last question. It's kind of playing off Dr. Childers, but sometimes we're taught in this world of social media that it kind of comes off superficial almost, like you're kind of just managing that outward appearance, and other people underestimate how important that is. What's some time that you love to just kind of pat yourself on the back and say yes, this was social media, but I'm so proud of this moment because it had this incredible turnout that really gave me the feel good, moment in my career.
This one. One of my clients plays running back for the Baltimore Ravens. He's the one that I mentioned with the Irish dance, and he was looking at Twitter and saw a mom that had a son that was Irish dancing, and she tweeted at him hey, just thank you for what you do. It really inspired my son. He was like, awesome. Glad your son dances here. Where does he dance? He just was really just kind of nice, and we started a conversation. The kid and his mom came to a game. They got to meet. They now they legitimately stay in touch on a weekly basis of having the back and forth and having that encouragement. And so I think when you make connections like that for people who would never connect and who didn't even know that they had this 13-year-old boy in Iowa and this running back for the Baltimore Ravens from South Florida have become friends and encouraging each other because of social media. And I think that is that's the good stuff is when that happens. But you can't just let it exist in Twitter sphere. You got to bring it out into the real world.
I think one of the things that I'm more proud of, I feel an obligation to do is to raise at times there are social issues or social causes that happen that I feel that I'm obligated to raise that through social media, to some of my connections to journalism in Israel and around the world, and in my classroom lately, mostly it's the sexual abuse in USA gymnastics. This should have never happened. This could have been avoided, and this should be talked about, so it will never happen again.
Yeah, like Ashley said, we have the ability to connect with fans every single game. We'll see. I'm here with my dad. It's my dad's 60th birthday, never been to a game, and we just stroll up and we put them behind home plate. Like, being able to do that is definitely a feel-good thing. And then just to kind of give fans the access, sometimes having been in this role for a few years now, it's not, the glamorousness of it wears off, once you're doing it so long. So yesterday I was in the elevator at Disney World, where our spring training facility is, and our general manager, who's a Hall of Famer and was a former GM of the Kansas City Royals, very successful there. There was a few maintenance guys in the elevators, and they were talking about a player. And they're like, he was a pitcher, but he was much better suited for shortstop, but it took them a while to figure that out, and they're talking. And the guy said, well, who does he play for? And the guy said, well, he played for the Royals. And so this guy was the GM of the Royals, was in the elevator with him, had no idea. And so he looks at me and just kind of smiles, and he looks at me, he's like, what year was that? And, he tells him the year. He's like, oh, yeah, I drafted him, and the reason he didn't pitch was because, and there was very like a This Is Sports Center commercial moment where he's just like, and he's like, well, what I said earlier, he was great at shortstop, I'm just, but it was, it's those moments where you get to bring people that are that almost will never connect, and to bring them together. Chipper Jones, one of the most storied Atlanta Braves, just was elected into the Hall of Fame, and when, we were sharing photos and videos inside his house. His mom and dad said, when you go into the hall, will you sign your first HOF autograph to us? And we were able to video that and take a photo of that and share that with the world. And in any other circumstance, no one else is going to be inside Chipper Jones' house with him when he gets the call from the Hall of Fame. So it's just really about connecting people to something that they love, and in this case it's sports.
We have time for about 1 to 2 more questions. Does anybody have any other questions?
10 years from now, what would you like to be doing? Where do you see yourself?
Ooh, I would have already published my tell-all, and I'm doing this. And I'm like kind of not kidding about that. I actually, you talk about writing, I write a ton about just experiences in this industry. And so honestly, like, I would love to, it's very labor intensive to be on the ground. Like, the travel and just there's no like normal rhythm. So honestly, at this 10 years, I hope that I'm seeing things from a little bit more of a strategic level, and maybe have something from speaking or writing or teaching or something that would be a little bit beyond. But that would be kind of a dream scenario. So is that awful that I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm just trying to get out, But I don't mean that way, but just applying all of this to something that's a little bit different.
Tenured associate professor somewhere. No, but yes, seriously, conducting research on the field of research that I'm doing now, hopefully continuing to research sport events around the world, and especially in the US. And keeping in touch with journalism to a certain extent, but focusing on academia, teaching and research.
It's incredibly hard for me to answer that question, because when I think back, I started with the Braves 6 years ago. And where I am in 6 years, I never could have predicted 6 years ago now. And that's due largely to technology, right? It's changed so much. And 10 years from now, like, will the cell phone even exist? We had this conversation at dinner the other night about, in 10 or 15 years, 20 years, are everyone just going to be wearing glasses? Like, is your brain just going to be connected to something on your head where you don't even hold? Like, where will technology be in 10 years? So when I look back 10 years ago, we weren't even having this conversation 10 years ago. So I have no idea where I'll be in 10 years, and I kind of like that, because that means we're just going to keep going and pushing, and things will be so different in 10 years that I can't even predict what that is right now.
Well, I'd like to thank the 3 of you for coming out and talking to us. I would also like to thank a number of people in the room. First is Dr. Courtney Childers, our chair of Social Media Week. back there. And then Mark Geller, who's our development officer, who without his help this week wouldn't have been possible. He got us the funding to bring in all of our speakers. I'd like to thank all the directors of our four schools, Dr. Maureen Taylor, who's here, Dr. Catherine Luther, Dr. John Haas, and Dr. Diane Kelly. And then I'd also like to thank our social media intern, Morgan, who's up front here. So, and then we'd like to thank John McNair, who we could not do anything in the college without. And we also like to thank the rest of our committee, like Donna Silby and Ann. So, thank you, everybody. Don't forget our session tonight at 5:30 too.
All right, PR 120 students. Close it.